Hey, it's Brad. So, I'd wager just about everyone has heard the phrase, the greatest lie the devil's told is convince people he doesn't exist. Well, strip the supernatural notations and connotations out, and it's pretty much just the worst and most insidious kind of destructive, whether self-destructive or of others, destructive behavior is that which promotes itself as benign. If it were actually benign, it wouldn't be destructive, so it doesn't really count. But because of that, you can't really tell until after the fact what of things that you think are benign end up being detrimental. I'd imagine most people who have had jobs can relate to the experience of putting 100% in on some project or task and thinking you did a really great job and you're doing everything you can and submit it to your boss or whatever and just tears it apart. Or similar, like, sure, everyone has had the experience when they were a kid, that dynamic with their parents or teacher or something. And I mean, it's easy to develop a fear and aversion response from that, particularly if there's no reason or you don't see any reason to continue in whatever the engagement is. But I mean, sometimes you don't really see the value, but if there's some system where a person who knows and practices that system has experiential proof, or I mean, to an extent it's anecdotal, but that's layers of subjectivity. But just when you can see proof that whatever they're doing is working, then maybe look into what they're doing. And there's things like unintended and tangential learning, and whether it's on a behavioral or even muscle memory level. Like on an interview with Joe Rogan, Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about how he likes the slim form factor of his phone. He doesn't want to bog that down with the case, but if he drops it, it's going to crack the screen and everything. So he was thinking, well, the soldiers flip their guns around and never drop them. Well, how they do that? They practice all the time. They're constantly flipping them around. They have all the different routines that they do with them. So he starts flipping his phone around a lot, so then he doesn't drop it. And that makes sense. I mean, the fear of dropping it and the potential cost of that is not outweighed, but mitigated little by little. And it's like there was a story that Jordan Peterson was telling about helping someone with fear of elevators, and he's a Canadian therapist, and he was saying, well, how far towards that elevator do you think you can walk? Maybe 20 feet. So you walk 20 feet and just stand there and just hang out until they get bored. And he's like, well, think you can make another 10 feet? No, maybe about 3. So he walk 3 more feet, just stand there until he gets bored. And eventually, gets on the elevator, goes up the floor, all this. And then he goes home or she goes home, whoever it is, and confronts their abusive spouse over years of whatever the behavior is. And it's because they, through having that confrontation with what's established as a fear loop in their mind, just getting near it and then having it sink in that there really is nothing happening, nothing negative, the crisis isn't occurring, the world isn't going to end. I mean, they're, seeing that the water's fine. And it's, like I'm telling my kids frequently, whenever they, want to give up on some, skill or game or whatever it is, some task that they're trying to do, it's really hard to teach kids things that require experience, because a lot of times you don't want the negative experience to happen to them, but that's the way that they would most rapidly internalize the actual message. So then you just need to set things up to where the path of least resistance is the right path. And whether that's, right path as determined by, a cohesive structure of your parenting, or what, by instilling the skills to be a, positive member of society, a good person, in any given moment, they have the tools and resources and ability and wherewithal, circumspection, to apply that knowledge, and hopefully, as they grow, then it becomes internalized and it's just their default. But whether or not they believe there's anything right to your overall message, if they do, follow just the rules, then maybe they can see a little bit of a positive return at a time, or not. And even if not, learning and following the rules is bare bones what you want of them. And then they will yield beneficial and positive results. Like, okay, so to atheists, so Christians, close your ears. The Bible is clearly a compendium of gathered knowledge, one way or another, even if you don't believe there's any sort of inspiration to it. Just the way medical texts and other fields and sciences just pass things down, even if you just view the entire Bible as purely like sociology and psychology and the lessons there, there's a ton of clearly beneficial things. And so just by looking at it, I mean, none of those are really anything to argue about. The application of a lot of Old Testament stuff, well, again, we're not talking about applying the laws as written, we're talking about looking at those dynamics as, like, anytime it's Satan versus Jesus or anything like that, think of that as being hubris versus rational logos, and just look through the whole Bible again, viewing it just as a psychology textbook. And then similarly, Christians, atheists, close your ears. Imagine if you could teach an atheist all of the lessons of the Bible to where they can fully internalize it. And then they're looking through and it's not that big of a jump, especially once they start seeing and experiencing positive and beneficial results, sometimes beyond intended and beyond expected. And really, that's just opening yourself up to letting there be any sort of a proof to yourself. And that's the entire nature of spirituality, I guess.